I'll put those dreams of writing scripts to the side, even though I pitched them on it heavy. And I got in this world, and the audacity came from just like, I'm going to win at all costs. You know, I felt I wasn't privileged. I wasn't like out here given anything. It was like, I'm going to take chances, and family didn't understand it. My degree didn't, put me in a certain direction. It was like, I'm going to get in where I fit in, make a mark, and eventually earn my keep.
Let's get it started.
Double O.
Free range, motherfucker.
Check 1 2. This is Double O, and you're tuned into episode 12 of the Free Range Podcast. This week we have Itsthereal, aka Eric and Jeff Rosenthal. Man, this is an amazing one, and hopefully it'll be a big one. They opened up their home and allowed me to come in and record on all their setup, so of course it's going to sound better than my stuff normally does, but don't worry, we'll get there. If you don't know who Itsthereal is, they have the A Waste of Time podcast with Itsthereal. They also have the Two Jews and Two Black Dudes Review the Movies podcast with the Locks. When I first met them, they were doing comedic sketches on YouTube, and that has turned into a very amazing, just pure creative space within the hip hop culture, where they've been able to host events interviewing 10 plus members of Rockefeller, have their own debut album, Teddy Bear Fresh, featuring Currency, Bun B, Just Blaze, Angie Martinez, Sway Calloway, bunch of others. They've been able to be extremely free within the culture, and it's something that I definitely appreciate and respect. We talk about a ton of things in this podcast. We obviously talk about their kind of upbringing, growing up in hip hop culture immediately outside of the New York City area. So we get a sense of that and how interesting that was. Defying their parents' expectations, how they shifted from what they thought they should do to truly what they needed to do. We have a lot of similar mentors and tracks. Eric used to work with Don C. and John Monopoly, who they've also interviewed on their podcast, so make sure you check that out. We talk about starting off as outsiders and being able to perform comedy and kind of make fun of stuff from that space, but how that changes once you become insiders. We talk about the importance of podcasting and how the way in which they've been able to snag guests on an early ascent up, and how that cements a certain time in history in this time capsule, and how when you look back at the hundreds of podcasts that they've done, how it's adding to the lexicon and history of the culture, and how important that actually is. For those stories to be told and those statements to be fixed in a place that you can always come back to. We start off talking a lot about something that seems to be floating in the ethos right now, which is this idea about pulling back from social media, or being a lot more mindful of how you interact with it, making sure that it's not controlling you and that you are ultimately controlling it. We talk about what's coming for their potential episode 250, which is already out. And if you didn't know, they got to interview their mom. So make sure you check that out. Follow Itsthereal at Itsthereal on all platforms. And let's get to it. Peace.
What up? It's your boy Double O. This is Free Range, number whatever. When I put it out, I put it out. And I am here with the elusive, but also illustrious Rosenthals. They are not twins. Eric and Jeff.
What's happening?
Itsthereal.
Hey.
What's up, guys?
What's happening? What up? Yo, thank you. Elusive. That's why you came to our crib.
Yeah,
I did.
We're so mysterious.
I know, yeah.
I know. You guys aren't elusive at all. Like, when I think about my time in New York and just your Twitter feed in general, it's just like you guys are everywhere all the time. And if not, you will Photoshop yourself in there.
You know what? That is absolutely true. We made a conscious effort maybe 6 months ago to really draw ourselves back. We felt like we were too out there.
Really?
If you, especially when you live in the city for 10 plus years, if you go to all the events, you would see us when you lived here, any event that was happening, we were there, right? Listening parties, music video shoots, concerts, like kickbacks, whatever it was, barbecues, we were there. And then we started to feel like we didn't want to become wallpaper. You know, we didn't want to be just like, oh yeah, of course we're going to see them. We noticed we had a show out in London, and we interviewed DJ Semtex, and we put a picture of us and Big Ben up there, and people went nuts for it, and we're like, oh,
Big Ben the building, not the DJ.
Yeah. Shout to Big Ben though.
And shout to Semtex.
Yes, but we felt like oh, we're in a different place. This is something that people don't usually see. It's not just us at SOBs. It's not just us at Santos or us at Highline Ballroom. This was a chance to at least appear to be doing something outside of what you expect of us. So we drew back, and we haven't been going to everything. So now when we go somewhere, the hope is that it's seen as like, oh, this is
that people
more special.
Care. Yeah.
That it's special. Yeah. How, so jumping into figuring out that was a later question, but we'll jump into it now. Balancing the social media, real life, not burning out the brand, sort of balance. Like, how are you guys finding yourself doing that now? Obviously pulling back a little bit, but do you think that takes away then from how people react to your name on paper if they're like, okay, we're going to come in and do, I just interviewed Out of Sight, and we talked about this interesting conundrum where he'll be in a building, he'll be in Warner Brothers, he'll be somewhere, and the head of the A&R will be like, man, what you're doing is amazing. I love it. I love it. I love it. And then I'll introduce him to another A&R, and she'd be like, oh, Out of Sight, what's going on? Are you still making music? Yeah. Because it's one of those things that can happen that if you don't feed the content beast, people immediately don't think that you're doing anything anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you fear that, or are you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's also this thing where with us, because we put out so much content and there's so much that we do, there's a lot of people obviously who fuck with us, but there's a lot of people who pretend. And like, so we get a lot of those conversations too, where it's like people will say, yo, like, so podcasting is like all you do now, right? Or like that's your thing. And it's like, yes, but there's also like these other like 6 other things. But I think that's like sort of
or I saw you did this podcast, and it's like, cool, and they're just like, but I didn't listen. And it's just like, well, what's more valuable? Is the picture more valuable than the actual hour and a half we spent with someone, or what? So. And there is a delicate balance of like, oh, we're posting too much on Twitter, posting too much on Instagram.
Or just putting out too much stuff. But I do think that at a certain point, you have to appeal to your audience and not just care about what the industry or like the culture or the quote-unquote culture at large thinks. I think it has to be... like, we have a designated fan base, and we have to appeal to them, and grow that.
But you also don't want to. We try to think in the Steve Jobs model of like, I know what you want. You know, like he wasn't going out and beta testing, the iPhone, right? It was like, no, this is what people need, and I'm going to give them that. So we'll ask, the internet at large who they want to see on the podcast. But meanwhile, like, we know
that we're not listening to any of their answers. Every single one is terrible.
Are they though?
Yeah.
Sometimes they're right. Yeah. That's how I feel about most DJ requests.
Yeah.
That's why just like, as soon as they're walking up, I'm like, I'm not taking it.
Right.
Oh, I used to always go up and request Egyptian Lover. and nobody would ever play it.
Talking about all the things that you guys are doing now, let's jump back a little bit. I've known you guys doing sketch comedy, rapping.
Yep.
getting choked out in my music videos.
Yeah,
being
that was
video host.
That was it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Correct.
Obviously,
we've taken a step back from that. Yeah.
Obviously, early podcasters. Even though you lost your best episode, which was my episode.
We were just talking about audio issues before this.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Although I don't know how you lose entire podcasts.
Oh
no,
it's happened.
That one was it was corrupted, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's all right.
I don't know.
One day someone will get a chance to hear the me meeting Steven Seagal at Ja Rule's house. But for you guys, how early did this start? Like, what was there something that came first, or were you guys just in the house kind of always just picking up things and doing them together and just creating a world?
Oh, how did we start working together?
No.
Oh.
How did you guys start down this path?
Yeah.
Was comedy first? Was music first?
Yeah. Well, we grew up in a household where comedy was definitely a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like Saturday Night Live,
David Letterman.
Yeah, Jim Carrey, Bill Murray,
In Living Color.
Chris Rock,
Yeah.
On and on and on. But I think where music came in was just naturally we grew up in this era where Hot 97 was everything, right? There was no competition. It was just like, I'm going to tune in. I'm going to listen to Flex. I'm going to listen to Angie. I'm going to listen to Ladies Night on Friday night. Like we would just blast that all the time. And so hip hop just became this thing. And not everyone, of our friends, certainly my year, really fucked with hip hop. So it was like my thing, right? And then when the internet really like got into it, we especially, and our brother Dan,
we went down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, like, you would download the most, just random thing that you could find just that had Kanye's name on it, and you downloaded a lot of files that were wrong, that were listed wrong and all that. But, we nerded out on it. It was going to Sam Goody and picking up, the Double XL or Scratch Magazine and really like studying it, like really loving it, and that was just our thing. It was waiting online to get DMX's new CD. It was waiting on line to go get Swiss's new CD. It was to get Birdman's new CD, and that all was just ingrained in us. So by the time that we both graduated college, I think we were looking to do something that we both felt passionate about, and where we wanted to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond, we were like, well, listen, we love hip hop and we love comedy. Well, let's do something that no one else is doing. And there's an opportunity there to just voice our very specific voice. You look at us and you're just like, all right, cool. Like glasses, curly hair, like tall Jewish guys. But like, did you know that we knew all this stuff? Well, let's express it in a certain way. Yeah. So the first video that we ever did that you'll remember is Deconstructing Biggie, right? And that was just like, we have a different perspective on this line. You're mad because my style you're admiring. Don't be mad. UPS is hiring. We looked at it from the UPS driver's perspective, who hated it, and the DHL and the FedEx guys thought it was the greatest thing in the world. But it wasn't our intention to go viral. Yeah. It was our intention to put something dope out there that was like, that's just those guys. And that became a thing.
Yeah, but then it did go viral. And so, you have to follow it up. And we threw an early retirement party for Lloyd Banks. Mm-hmm. And, then it just became this thing where every single Monday we were putting out a new episode, different look, different feel, at a certain point, different guests.
Yeah, and, our parents didn't necessarily understand it. When we lived at home and we were making those videos, 30 minutes north of New York City, mom and dad were like, okay, they're doing something. They knew the late hours that we were putting in to put a video out for no money, our self-imposed deadline on a Monday morning at 9:00, just so the internet could have it. And then we moved into the city, and it was our big mission to be a part of the scene, to be of this culture. We didn't want to just be the Twitter egg, commenting or throwing something out there. It was like, cool, we're going to go to all those events. And that's why it was a big thing for us to be everywhere and be seen, and know when Dan Solomito would come up to us outside of a Nas concert and be like, you guys are real. And Mick Boogie the same thing. And a lot of people in that era get to know us, get to know that we are not, culture vultures, that we're not here to take. We wanted to provide something, give back, and be honest about it. And that's what we did. So it came from a true place, and we put something out there that no one else was doing.
Where do you think that audacity comes from, though, prior to? Because I'm sure, just like everybody else, especially there was a track. Your guys are going to college, so it's like something was going to happen prior to, but then you honed in and focused in. Did you always know that you were going to do just this, or was it like, oh, I'm going to be an English major and then figure it out from there?
Oh, well, I'll speak for myself, and then you can speak for you.
Yeah,
I'm the older brother by 3.5 years, and when I went to school, and I didn't get into the Newhouse School of Communications. I was destined to be a filmmaker, right? Like a feature writer and director. I didn't get into Newhouse, and my heart was broken. I still went to Syracuse, but I was in the College of Arts and Sciences. And then after a semester, when I told my parents, I'm like, no, I'm going to go into visual and performing arts and really like start cutting film and really like, get all these actual, things out of my system. My parents were like, don't you want to just wait and go to grad school and do that? Like, they were really concerned. I'm the firstborn, and I go off to college, and they're like, you're using tuition to study film, and like, and
yeah, like, what's the plan here?
Yeah, and even when I graduated, and I did cool things. I interned for a music video company. I learned a lot there here in the city. I was mentored on the set of a major feature film. Like, I did a lot of cool things, and I tried to put myself in a position where, like, I was going to succeed regardless. Our parents were just like, what is going on? And then, I tried selling scripts, and they didn't sell for great reason, and came back, and I spent the summer after I graduated running to the beach, 2.5 miles. I never ran in my life, unlike you. Like this was like full on, like, get running shorts, grab a pen and a whole bunch of blank paper, shove them in my pocket, run to the beach, write until I got hungry, run back, and they're just like pulling their hair out. They're like, this is madness. Like, what did you get a degree for? And eventually it was like, cool, I'm going to switch this, this lane and take a temp job and, get some money coming in, but also try to live my dreams out. And I met Kanye West before the college dropout because I had read a XXL magazine, really focused on his managers, Don C and John Monopoly, and was like, you know what? I need to meet them. I need to be a part of this operation. And you know what? I'll be the documentary filmmaker for them. Mm-hmm. I'll put those dreams of writing scripts to the side, even though I pitched them on it heavy. And I got in this world, and the audacity came from just like, I'm going to win at all costs. I felt I wasn't privileged. I wasn't like out here giving anything. It was like, I'm going to take chances, and family didn't understand it. My degree didn't, put me in a certain direction. It was like, I'm going to get in where I fit in, make a mark, and eventually earn my keep. And I think that's how I did it.
Yeah, I think just to speak to like our family's not like totally understanding it. Our aunt Jane, up till maybe like last year was still like, you should do you want to go to law school? Like, do you want to do like an actual job that like makes sense?
My dad still does that.
Yeah.
Now, so
and by the way, you went off somewhere. We had dinner with Aunt Jane like 3 months ago, and I got it when we were walking back to her apartment. So
yeah, so maybe not a year.
Yeah.
But anyway, so my story was basically I went to college. I wanted to. I studied American Studies, which is a nothing, and I ended up writing about hip hop because that's part of American Studies, I guess. Because you can make it whatever you want it to be. And so I changed that, and I became, and I started writing all this stuff about hip hop, and which I loved, and I wanted to write for Rolling Stone. I had seen Almost Famous, and that was where I wanted to write for, and so I thought that was the job, like going on tour with a bunch of bands, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Being a groupie.
Yeah. Like
you wanted it all.
Out groupieing the groupie. Like the groupies make you a groupie of them. And so I thought that was going to be my life. And then I graduated and I started working for HBO and making sketch comedy videos with them. And that was something that we had grown up doing anyway. We had been making sketch comedy videos with our friends, mm-hmm. and also like rapping with our friends. And so when you talk about the audacity, it was just sort of like born of that, where it's like, we're already doing this stuff for our friends anyway. Why not just give it out to the ether that is the internet?
Yeah. And it's funny. Today we don't really look at Eminem as like one of our like favorites. He's not in rotation with us. There's a certain like portion of his career where it really did speak to us. 8 Mile was like done really well. And I think when we saw that, we were like, okay, that's his truth. And he fits in. He's a white guy in hip hop. His truth is, you know, the struggle that he had in getting to this place in his life. And we were like, cool. Well, we're not going to be anything we're not. Our raps are going to be about like our friend circles and like making, you know, fun of and light of the kids that we worked with at the day camp that we worked at, right? And we didn't, you know, we burned these CDs and we did it in like real mixtapes. We were called the Purchase Street Sweepers because we grew up on Purchase Street and we loved K-Slay. And we would, you know, give these CDs out and we perform for our friends, right? And that was our reality. When we were going to do sketch videos, we were speaking to things that were insidery, but we weren't insiders. So our truth was our perspective of it, and that's what we put out there. And I think that's how we've tried to continue to stay relevant and stay in this business that we've sort of created. Whether or not our family would understand it, that's fine. Yeah. But there was this community out there somewhere online on the Nah Rights and the Two Dope Boys and the Misinfos and everywhere else that did appreciate it, and that blew our minds.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think about that era, and it's funny because, and maybe you guys are a little bit younger, so you maybe peep seen, but I remember YouTube was such a utility. It wasn't necessarily like the ecosystem yet. It was like, oh, I need to upload this here so that I can put this on my MySpace page,
right?
So that I can blast it out to all of these places. And it's interesting now that, you know, a couple generations later, and that is the world. But as you become insiders, how does that change your perspective and how you navigate from project to project?
Yeah,
I think it like, there's no way that we can make those videos that we started out doing the same way again. Like there's too many relationships.
Yeah.
Can't ruin those.
No, it's a fact, you know. I remember we would do these videos and we were not reckless, but certainly it was a different time in terms of like self-reflection for artists. I don't know that Mano was ever seen, you know, making fun of himself until he came into our lives or we came into his lives, or Bun B or Cameron or a lot of people with that certain aesthetic that we brought, right? They all had great senses of humor, but again, you can't make those same Dame Dash jokes once you're insiders, right? Yeah. I think we were accepted into this world, and all of a sudden we saw what was behind the curtain, and we can comment in a certain way, and we chose to live our creative lives in a certain way too. So we did sketches for 3.5 years, and that was dope. And we definitely were at the forefront and provided this really cool perspective. But when Twitter came around and you couldn't spend a week making a video, whereas someone's going to make a joke that you could have made and spent all this time on, and they're going to make it in 10 minutes, and express themselves in 140 characters at the time, we knew we had to change or we'd get extinct, right?
Yeah. Like, you don't want to just be like those guys who've only done this one thing for 10 years, and it's like, oh, right, like, they're the guys on their YouTube channel still plugging away and making jokes about, like, Memphis Bleak, and it's like, it doesn't carry over.
Yeah.
And so I think for us, it was, we had to evolve. We had to start doing all these things. I think that our platform now is, we like to tell people stories in a different way.
Because people do ask. They're like, okay, what are you? In fact, we went out to the Grammys one year and we met one of Jam Master Jay's sons. And he was like, oh, man, someone was telling me about you over there. What do you guys do? And we say, we're hip-hop sketch comedians. And he was like, you draw rappers?
And we're like, no. I mean, I can see where that's coming from.
You know what? I get that.
But we're not the guys on 42nd Street who are like, hey, it's Big Sean on a skateboard jumping over a crocodile or whatever. Like, it's...
Although, if you want to add that to the repertoire.
Wouldn't that be dope, though?
Yeah.
We just need to work on it a little bit. But for us, we're storytellers. And that goes over everything we do. We're telling stories in music. We're telling stories at our live shows. We're telling music in podcasts. We're telling our story when we're sitting on a park bench with someone, right? We did the book. Whatever it is, it's our perspective and our voice told a certain way. But we had to evolve and adapt, as Jeff was saying. And it's not done in an opportunist way. It's like, no, we're going to express ourselves in a different way, and this is one of our many talents. And I think technology has helped in that. I think understanding ourselves and our voice has helped with that. And I think the world that we live in has afforded us those opportunities.
Do you still feel the need in the back of your mind, though, to attack the first dream? Like, still kind of like moving towards the idea of being able to tell the story in film?
Well, in a different way. We are getting into film projects, but they're not as I envisioned them certainly all those years ago. I think part of that's like, you never dream you'll be in this position. You know, I didn't major in sketch comedy. You know, you didn't think you were going to be in the hip hop world. But here we are with all this experience now. And I think we're just telling stories in a better way. Listen, I wrote scripts when I was 19 that I didn't have any worldview. I didn't love, I didn't lose, I didn't travel, I didn't have any life experience. Now you can look and express yourself in a better way.
Yeah.
So, it's cool what we're doing, and I'm happy that we're more relevant than ever, and I'm glad that there's all these opportunities to express ourselves in different ways.
Definitely. Now, we talked earlier before the podcast started that this was not necessarily the natural next move to get into podcasting.
No.
And again, like we said earlier, I was on the original, I guess that's the original phase one of the podcast.
Yeah. 2010.
Yeah. So if that wasn't, what was it, just something you guys were testing out? Like, what made you step into this space?
Well, neither podcast was like our idea. Okay. So we had done sketches for 3.5 years. Yeah. And then, one, we weren't making any money off of it. It was literally just like, we want to do this thing, and we think that there's a funny and smart and clever thing that we can do. And then at a certain point, that run just like it ran up. Yeah. We got burnt out. Our father had passed away. There was just like a lot of like stuff that gave us like little reason to hold on to that. And so then we were friends with a guy at the time who we started a podcast with, and it was his idea, and we did it for 52 weeks. He lived in LA, we lived in New York, and
so you would do it like a bunch at a time, here, there, and again, technology is different, right? You don't have to you don't have to upload it to the craziest, things. It's we're just here on a laptop and a mixer and 3 mics in our own place. That's a lot easier now.
Yeah.
And we can do this
had a lot more of that back then.
Yeah, and
you had
you
to
can
like have like a whole computer set up, like,
and our friend. Yeah. This is like we can just bounce this and upload it immediately. But certainly that was a different time.
And so that was an exhausting process, the first podcast.
Okay.
And then we had sold a TV show in 2015. It was us and John Legend, and in the gap between us actually selling the show and us closing the deal, which was an 8-month process, our agents were like, hey, you guys should do a podcast. Keep your name out there. Podcasting is just starting to happen. Let's think about that. And we were like, we've already done it.
Yeah.
We've already done it, and like it wasn't fun the first time. Why would we do it a second time?
Right. Especially because we were, again, we didn't want to be stuck as known as one thing.
Exactly.
We're like, well, if we did it before, why would we revisit that? Like, that seems sort of backward.
And so then, I don't know how we got convinced to do it, but we ended up doing it.
Yeah.
And we sold it to a company. The company put out a press release, and they said, Itsthereal is going to be doing this podcast. Basically, we said there was going to be a they said it was going to be a dinner party style conversation. And we said that.
That's what we said, yeah.
And they put out a press release that said it was a dinner party. And we were like, fuck. So we have to cook for all these rappers.
And then we did.
And so we did.
Yeah, because it got a great reaction online. So we were like, well, now we're stuck.
If the internet wants it, then we will give them.
And then we were cooking sea bass for gunplay, right? And but what it was I think once we figured out maybe 20 episodes in what we were doing, because again, we're here and it's like the sound's not great in the first 3 episodes, and the idea of people eating on mic was not a great idea.
No, on an audio only podcast, like you get like a very ASMR environment.
I was like, it was prior to that.
Man, maybe we were ahead of our time. Yeah,
twice.
Yeah. But what really worked for us was I think we started to care in a new way. We were like, this is something that is an opportunity for us to do essentially what a magazine cover could 5 years before, right? Where magazines and newspapers couldn't do these long pieces that really delved into who a person was. Well, maybe we can. And that was our opportunity with all these people who, we're really thankful that we got the opportunity to sit down with people before they passed, Combat Jack, Mac Miller, and it bothers us tremendously that we didn't get to sit down with people like Ice Pick, who was Jadakiss's manager, or like Amar Brown, who did radio at Atlantic, or Nipsey Hussle, who we saw just weeks ago at his shop, and he was like, man, we got to get this done. But while we have the chance with people, I think to give a perspective of who they were in that time has become very important to us. And that's what the podcast means to us now. Forget like the fact that we can, be seen in pictures on Twitter. It's about, and again, we're not doing this for money. We're doing this for a chance to create something that lasts.
Do you find that is, as we get older and as we kind of are still, we're like, hip hop's still around. We're still in this, and it's providing so much for us. Is that what you see as kind of your contribution to it? Is almost, helping add to the library of conversation?
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Partly, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because, I think that we saw our sketches, they would perform well, but they didn't have the long-lasting quality that I think we might have been searching for. And, some of them. Because Eric is going to look at me and be like, no, like literally every single one of them is perfect. And how could you say that?
Yeah. That's our relationship, yeah.
But so, with this podcast, there's a lot of things where you can go back and listen and be like, wow, like that was or is a person's moment in time or like their whole journey. And, there is something to that. There is in this, in the war zone that is the internet and where so much is like lost, this is something that has some sort of permanence. It has some sort of weight. And I think that like that's the sort of stuff that our projects are sort of working towards. And also like, yes, I think that we did need, as outsiders to this industry and culture, you do need some sort of weight to make the sort of jokes or sort of, commentary that we were making at that time. Like otherwise we're just some white guys who are just like, hey, like that's, your shoes are dumb. Like,
Right. And I think like if you can look at something that really established ourselves in the podcast game, because we've had a lot of people on as guests, but when we decided to do a live show in New York, we looked at it and Jeff was like, listen, we can't just do one guest.
Everybody does one guest.
Yeah, Combat, Rap Radar, Premium Pete, whoever can do a show and sit up there with one person. And Jeff was like, let's go crazy and get 10 people on a stage and let's.
That's not exactly how I said. I wasn't like, let's go wild.
Yeah. No, you were like, let's really fuck it up and get like 10 people.
Again, didn't say that, but I did say we should. How about we get 6 friends from Rockefeller to tell that story. And it ended up ballooning out to these 10, pillars of Rockefeller.
But what it is, and if you look at anything that we do, it's we care.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can sit there and you can have all those people on stage, but it's we care so much about this story, and these are people that we grew up with, admiring. But now you sit on stage with them, and you're next to Biggs, next to hip hop, and on down the line, and it's like, let's really like tell this story. And then you can look back, and people still watch the video, people still listen to it now, and that is a moment in history. And we're so thankful for that. And to have those as like real friends now is mind blowing. But that's I think the turning point for us.
which one of you is Joe Budden Fitz on Instagram?
Oh, first of all, I wish I was.
Oh my God.
It's so good. But Eric is the one who was smart enough to say, how come we don't have a Joe Budden Fitz for us? How come we don't have Fitz the Real?
Fitz the Real.
Which is great. And
now we have two.
Yeah, Fitz the Real and Fitz the Real, because one is with a Z. I think it's brilliant, and I love it, and I love that people are dedicated in a way that we're not.
But what's interesting, what we were just talking about, is you guys always seem to catch the upswing of a lot of artists. Obviously.
Oh, we're not perfect,
No, like we said no to Nicki very early on, and like we missed out on that
in like 08 or 07 or something.
Yeah.
It's 08.
Yeah.
Because what are we even talking about? There's barely any.
No.
Yeah, thank you for being able to be like, guys, it was a long time ago.
Sycamore came to us and he was like, guys, you will really not regret this. You should work with this girl. She's going to sign to Lil Wayne and she's going to be the biggest thing. And we were like,
I had an argument, and this must have been 2009, maybe. I forgot. There was Mark Ronson had I don't think it was a New Year's party, but it was something. And I remember arguing with the A&R upstairs at Webster Hall, arguing the dude down. This was December, before So Far Gone comes out that February. And I'm like, Drake is not going to blow. I was like, it is not going to happen, not because of Drake, but I was like, there's no way Wayne is going to let one of his, core writer team people around, because you had him, Jay Mills at the time, and all of that around, and I was like, there's no way he's going to let him get bigger than him, because that's not the way that superstars work. Right? It's like they don't allow those things to happen. But little did I know, Drake had different plans.
I thought that it was that Drake was just not as good as Lil Wayne. I thought he was, and I also thought that the cool kids were going to pop bigger than Drake.
They were on the same bill. We went and saw them at SUNY Purchase because Real Life Kaz, who was at SUNY Purchase at the time, was putting on the show and invited us, and we were like, cool, let's go. Yeah. And Jeff was like, I was like, yo,
cool kids are gonna blow. And then I will say the Cool Kids sound became bigger than the Cool Kids themselves, and you can argue that the Cool Kids sound is bigger than Drake, maybe.
I would not argue that. But all right. Yeah.
It's not. Nothing's bigger.
Yeah. Drake is selling out a week.
Guys, I'm just trying to get
London.
I'm trying to get a win here.
Yeah. I will tell you that. I mean, at the time, there's so many. It's funny because when even hearing you guys talk, and I don't know, maybe it's just because of the time, but even people like John Manop and Don C.
Yeah,
I was just with Don C in Chicago.
Yeah,
and I was like, do you remember? If people don't know, I went to college with John Legend.
John Stevens.
Yeah.
And I had done a remix of I Used to Love You in my living room in LA. Sent it to him. Knowledge was on it. And it was just I was like, yo, I'm doing this party in LA. This was before I moved back out here, before Kids in the Hall got signed, all of that. And I was like, I already was cool with Just. So I was like, they want to have Kanye and Just perform at the same time. Come out, he'll DJ, Kanye will do a couple shows. And talking to John, he was like, oh yeah, cool, talk to Don C, whatever. And that was my first entry into that world. And I think the quote was like $5,000.
Man.
And then 3 weeks later, he got on the Usher tour.
Oh,
it was a wrap.
That was not 5,000 anymore.
He'll be 50 from this.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But yeah, John Manop was the first person that introduced me to the cool kids. Knowledge and I at our own. We had a show in Chicago with Jay Davey.
Oh my God, yeah.
And we were performing, and it was just like, yeah, these are these guys have something really interesting and something ill going on.
I think that what we really love is the behind the scenes stories and those behind the scenes people. And I think that we found our lane with that. And John Monopoly, who, someone I've known just as long as you, but he's been in and out of my life, right? To come back and circle back all these years later, to be able to have him on the podcast was very meaningful to us. And that we can have this new relationship now. It's the same thing with John Legend. It's the same thing with a lot of people, Don C., who knew me certainly in a different position
when you were working with Kanye.
Behind the lens, and to be able to come back and sit down, regardless of whether we're recording something, just to have them in our lives. When we were at the Marathon store, we walked into the parking lot, and John Monopoly was sitting there in his Bentley, and he was just like, "What's up?" And we're like, "Oh, hey!" But like, that's something that we cherish, because relationships in this business are everything, and your name is everything. And if you want to have longevity, it's like, just be a good person and let people know what you're up to, even if you're not letting them know what you're up to online. You know, if you can go see people and keep them updated, that's the more valuable thing than just like talking about what we were talking about earlier, which is, do you have to tell the world at large, what you're doing?
And you can't hold grudges, because there will be a time where you'll feel a way about every single person, just because you're like, wait a minute. It's been like 3 days since I texted this person, and they haven't texted me back. And, you know.
Oh no, I can't wait until we're on like the top, and we can just like bring down the hammer.
No, listen. That's a real thing too, because
that's very Eric, by the way. Not me.
Oh,
I can't hold a grudge. But Eric absolutely does.
I absolutely do. I want this on the record. You know, like I just want to prove I got a big chip on my shoulder, you know. And I think that's sometimes how you, whether it's a real thing or an invented thing, it's sometimes how you have to propel yourself.
No, I think it's actually necessary. My ideas, it was something that I was actually talking about with my brother the other day, is that you have to have especially coming from the artist standpoint, you have to have a level of delusion that is must possibly bordering on crazy, because what you're saying is, even here right now, we're sitting at the dinner table, and we're like, this thing is going to come out and needs to be heard by the world.
Yeah.
You know, like that. If you were to tell that to somebody they're just like, well, what?
Yeah.
That is a ridiculously audacious and self-centered and whatever thing, but that is how art comes out and is propelled forward. Is you are driven by something. That this has to come out and has to be heard and has to. So it's fine to.
We sold a TV show to MTV. We chose to go to MTV. That was our choice. We made that choice. They were going to be willing partners in it, sign contracts, the whole thing. The TV show didn't get made. And do I feel a certain way now that Viacom is like dying? Yes, I love it. I'm fine with it, and I'm moving forward with my life.
And then me, I'm just like, listen, MTV is doing quite well right now. Their numbers are up. If they want to, move forward with this show that was sold 4 years ago,
then we're okay.
We're okay.
Yeah, I mean, it is balancing those two things. It is, because that oftentimes happens too, is you could feel a way about it, and then that person will call you and just be like, hey, so I have $1 million for you.
Right.
And I will be running out the door.
I will see you there tomorrow.
With like a flag in my hand.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think there's delusion too, to believe that, like, all right, if someone says no to you, to move on and like have that confidence to go for something else.
Yeah, if they say no to you, they're wrong. You're not. That's where the delusion is. But I think that in terms of like having something that needs to be heard, I mean, listen, there's a lot of like garbage on the internet or in people's lives. Like, at least I would honestly say our stuff is better than at least 70% of stuff.
And if you
70%.
If you
70.
You see that? It's a good.
But if you out there, if you out there don't believe in yourself, then no one else will.
Yeah.
So call it delusion, call it reality, whatever it is. You have to
call it delusion or call it reality, whatever it is. Sure.
No, but you have to go out there and sell yourself, right? And that's another full-time job. So and thank God we're good storytellers, because we're good in a room, and if one place isn't going to buy it, well, someone else will. And by the way, we've been in meetings where we're just like, this is going to work, and you can either rock with us or not, because this is going to happen somewhere. Yeah. And confidence and then having something to back it up is where the best intersection is.
Well, I mean, even talking and thinking about the story and the conversation so far, also, I mean, how I've gotten through a lot of it is also so much of it is about timing. Mm-hmm. Knowing that if this deal doesn't happen, if this idea doesn't move forward, it may not be that they hate it. It may be literally it's just because what they actually want they've already set their mind on, and you just didn't provide that. So
Yeah, you don't fit into it. So, like, for instance, we're coming up on our 250th episode, and we've been going, we have a certain level of people that we like to have on the podcast now, but we've been, like, aiming
out of here.
Out of here. And so a lot of people we've reached out to, they're interested in being on the podcast, but the timing doesn't work out, like, for this particular episode. So it's like, you get people who are like, I will do it, and I'm excited to do it, but I can't do it until July, or I can't do it until August. So it's like certain people's, like, aims, just like, it won't match up now, but at a certain point, like the sliding doors.
Totally.
It will happen.
Now, you may ask yourself, okay, well, what do you do when someone says no? And obviously there's a list of 50 names that you want, and you go through them. But did Jeff come up with an idea recently where he's just like, you know what? Maybe we'll just, because we've also, like, played it up. We're like, 250, who should be on it? Like, oh my God, looking forward to this 250th episode.
I said that 250 is just a metaphor, and that we don't actually have to put out a 250th episode
so
until we want to.
Label it 251.
Yeah, just skip it. Because like we're 7 days out, and we do not have a guest for 250 at this point. But
you can always get Coolio.
Oh,
sure,
man. Yeah. This is true.
I love the thought that was put into this. You could always get a Coolio,
right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
I mean,
thanks for being our booking department.
There was
Coolio.
when we had the podcast at that original place that put out the press release. Yeah. At that time, what we would do is we would record the podcast and we would send them the file on, some sort of, like, Dropbox, right? And they would post it on West Coast time and program it into the system.
Which, by the way, we found out years later, we can just do it ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's much easier and much quicker. You don't have to have somebody else do it.
Right. But
anyway,
at the time, that is what we did.
Yeah.
And we woke up one morning here in New York, East Coast time, and people who were looking forward to that Tuesday morning post and automatically downloading to their phone, they were just like, hey, something's not right. And we're like panicked. So we go and we check, and you press play on what is labeled, a waste of time with Itsthereal, and you have our picture there. And it was two girls from Laguna Beach talking about their gynecological issues. And people listened 15, 20 minutes in because they thought it was a joke on our part.
They thought that it was a bit.
And really, it was just, they got the streams crossed.
Yeah, we were going to, they uploaded the wrong file, but they thought that we were going to cut in and be like, hey guys, it's Jeff and Eric here from Itsthereal.
But we were like, thank you for giving us that credit, because that would have been an amazing joke.
Yeah, which maybe that's what we should do.
Yeah, we should do that on 250, yeah.
Piggybacking off of that and the original podcast, obviously people come up with ideas, people build teams. Teams don't work out.
Yeah.
With what you know now, how do you think about it moving forward in terms of, obviously you guys are always going to be the nucleus until he kills you one day.
Yeah, sure.
Number one.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
But until that happens.
This is Game of Thrones. My God.
How do you look forward when you're thinking about building partnerships, teams? What do you look for? What are the key things to try to get that stuff to work out better?
I think in the beginning we were always looking for people who had that sort of, like, weight to them, where it was like, oh, this isn't, like, the perfect example, but, like, say in 2007 it would be like, oh, I need to sign to Atlantic Records, I need to sign to Def Jam, because I need that sort of muscle behind me.
I need a manager, because a manager makes us legitimate.
Yeah.
And so we have had managers, we have had agents, and we have had people within that who have not done the work that we need them to do. At this point, I just want people who do their work. I want somebody who's as excited about what we're doing as us.
We were on podcast networks, and they didn't provide what we thought they should have. So when you end up working on your own, I think you figure out, most importantly, or as importantly as what you want, is what you don't want. So moving forward, we're looking for a partnership. That's a big thing. We had a meeting last time we were in Los Angeles, and we said, this is what we don't need, but what we could use is this, and that's in infrastructure. That's people who have energy to give to us that aren't necessarily taken away by everything, and people who understand we're building something. This is a business. This is we're 12 years into something. We have a brand. The name is good. The relationship's good. We're good. Yeah. We're good at what we do too, but we need that extra thing, that relationship to brands, that idea that people can push us and work on our behalf, the hours that we can't, and allow us to just focus on the creative.
Yeah, I think it was recently told to me that a manager needs to have 3 qualities. They need to have energy, they need to have hustle, and they need to have connections. And when one of those legs falls short, then it doesn't work. Like, you have to have those 3 things. And so for as long as our career, we've had people who have worked alongside us who have only, like, it started off with 3 and then immediately became 2.
Yeah.
And so I think that for us, it's just like we need to find a person who has those 3 qualities.
So when we put out, we sold out SOBs for our rap shit.
Yeah.
2 months before we even put out our album, which was, in New York City, for those who don't know, like, SOBs is really
the place.
The place.
It's certainly a rite of passage.
Yeah, for John Legend, for Drake, for 2 Chainz, for us, as long as we've been living in New York City, it's like you go there and you're like, man, I want to be in the green room and I want to strangely walk through the audience to get on stage.
The other rite of passage is between the F and 2-3 lines.
Yeah.
On 14th Street.
It's a very New York City.
Yeah, where the guy who's playing Beatles songs but doesn't know the words,
or has his guitar tuned, whatever. So, but it is a rite of passage at SOBs, and when we did that, and the management didn't do anything for us, we were like, well, what do we need them for anymore? And we let them go. And when we brought 2 Jews and 2 Black Dudes review the movies, our podcast with the Locks, which is really all 3 members of the Locks, it just was named when 2 of them were lucid and Jadakiss was asleep. Okay, but when our agents at the time couldn't see that and didn't get other things and didn't see the full potential, we got rid of them. And so for the last year and a half, we've done amazing things on our own. A lot of incoming calls. We handle our business very well for 2 guys, a 2-man operation. We are in a place now where we are looking to
expand.
Yeah. But in that year and a half, you prove not only what you can do yourselves, but to everybody else, you prove what your brand is worth. And so now we're in that better place. And I'm glad that we had that experience. I'm glad that we went to London, that we're getting offers from Germany and Dubai and Australia and elsewhere. I mean, I'm glad that we have performed at the Roots Picnic and that we've continued to go. We're not getting ads every week, but we're putting it out there just like we were hungry when we were doing the sketches every week. This is something where you're building up something knowing that there's a better tomorrow.
Boom.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
It's so interesting because I'll have a bunch of young artists and they're always like, oh, I need a manager. Oh, I need a manager. Or, oh, I need this and need that. And I try to tell them, it's like, if you cannot do as much of that stuff yourself to warrant, I had an old songwriter tell me once that
an old songwriter meaning like a Carole King, like old,
wow, that. Like Brill Building.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And they were like, the only thing that the most important thing that you can do in this industry is inspire greed, because that's where all the connections come from, and that's also when they feel like they're not getting enough, they also leave. But do you have a fear that incorporating new people into the fold are just going to kind of create this cycle all over again, or are you just confident that like we've done it enough by ourselves? If these people don't work out, we can just keep moving?
Yeah, I think that we've had loyalty to people that may not have, done their share, and I think that we've also like paid people way more than they probably deserved out of that loyalty. But I think that at a certain point, you become, smarter. I would like to think, and also like more vocal. Where you're just like, no, this isn't right. Like you should be doing this work on behalf of us, and you're not doing it. As much as like it is telling people what you don't want, or like knowing what you don't want, you have to be able to say, well, this is exactly what I do want, and that like you have to do that.
Yeah, and also in this world where Jeff and I can just do things and you don't have to run it through a system, would we like to keep that? Yeah, but is that realistic? Maybe not. And do we take other opinions? Yes, but as you said, we're smarter, so it's not like, okay, everyone has an opinion, and I'll sacrifice this for you. Yeah. It's like, no, we know what we're doing, and we want to do it this way, so help us get that done.
Yeah, I think just to put a button in this, but it's like when we first had management, and we would email people, but like I think that what I've seen without having management is how much management like gums up the process, where it's just another person to like bring into it. Yeah. But if it's just the two of us, like things move so quick. Like you get deals done, you get things to happen in like a moment. But if you introduce somebody else and it's like, oh, it has to wait 6 hours, 8 hours, 3 days, a week.
There was a time when we had, so there was this company and we sold the video rights to that company for our podcast. And they came with a booking person. And that booking person
booked 0 guests.
But we would hit them and say like, hey, here's a million names, and we would love all these people equally. Please go and do this. And then you have to like check in on them and be like, hey, have we heard from this person yet? And in the meantime, it's just like, we'll just do it ourselves.
Also, I do want to say about that booking person.
Yeah.
Who we maybe had like 3 interactions with on email like ever. But that booking person would say, hey guys, do you want Amber Rose for the podcast? And we'd be like, yes, absolutely. Yes. Like, within minutes, we'd be like, yes. Didn't get Amber Rose. It's just like, hey, do you want President Obama? Sure. Yeah. Do I want Coolio? Sure.
Yeah.
Make it happen.
There's something that happens, and I don't know if this happened. It seems like it happened a little bit with you guys, but it's something that I'm just saying to warn all young creatives is you can fall into this situation, especially when you have a quote unquote manager, where you forget that person works for you, and then sometimes you shift into
100%.
Like you're working for them,
right?
Yeah,
that can happen also financially, but also just in the way that your mind is working, and then you end up essentially operating under their marching orders, as opposed to being like, no, wait a minute, this is what.
Yeah,
that is absolutely true.
And I think like less with our managers, but more with our agents, where it was just like they had a vision for what this whole thing was, and they would be like, hey, the TV show didn't work out, but this idea that you did 10 years ago, that's what you should be doing. And it's like, no, we did that 10 years ago.
Right.
And it's like funny, but like that's not what we're on now. We're on this other stuff. And so like we would get these dumb notes from them, and they would just like they were so focused on this thing that happened 10 years ago.
And also it felt like we had to prove ourselves to them, like you're saying. And that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. You brought us in because you see our talent. Okay, well, build off of that.
Yeah.
Don't just like,
Don't tell me how good I was 10 years ago.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, the one thing that I try to tell everybody, going back to like the theoretical young artists that I often talk to, is that if you do not have a solid structure yourself, every room you step in, someone is going to add whatever their ideas are to make that structure work. And so the more solid that your base can be, the more solid that your ideas, identity, everything is when you step in, it allows a much easier conversation, because they can say, oh, okay, this is what it is, and I can do this with it, as opposed to, you should do that thing from 10 years ago.
Wait, do you actually talk to young people? Because theoretical young people makes it sound like you just made them up.
There are a lot of conversations that I do have, but they're all so many different kinds of young people. There might be somebody who's starting a store. There might be a young producer. There might be, but what I've seen across the board is that they all have similar, everyone has this idea that, and I think oftentimes they're trying to do it to themselves, in that they're trying to legitimize themselves by having someone else in the fold.
For sure.
I think that's,
And it's always because it doesn't, I mean, I don't know when it felt real for you guys, but I would say, you've known me almost all of my career. I didn't actually be like, oh, I've made it until like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
At like craft services
Yeah.
on like Paramount Live. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm behind the curtain. Like
Yeah.
the ideas that the stuff that I made up when I was in college, like we somehow made it here. I was backstage at Hannibal Buress. And
Yeah.
I was just like, oh no.
Yeah.
Did I miss, like I wasn't paying attention when it happened. And so I think for a lot of people, they don't realize that, a lot of the journey, you just doing the work legitimizes you.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
there's so many people. I was telling someone this yesterday. You would think with all of the tools that we have, this ability to literally make records, do all this stuff now, that everyone would have a certain level of professionalism.
Right.
That they'd be able to execute. And I still I literally the other day got a voice note as like a demo. She was like, yo, can you listen to this? I was just like, what?
No.
What is this?
No.
What are
Yeah.
you doing? You can actually record on your iPhone.
Yeah.
And you're just going to send me a voice note to see if...
It's nuts.
And it's like not written all the way yet. And it's
Yeah.
like, but you could maybe... And I was kind of off key, but, hopefully you'll get an understanding.
Yeah, fix it in post.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what? So, so much of it is not necessarily getting somebody to stand next to you to say, look, I represent you.
Right.
As much as it is do the work, build the structure as solid as possible. Then people will come,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you talk about like when you made it. There's so many points over a decade plus career where it's like, oh, I feel like I made it in that moment. But the secret is that like it keeps going.
Yeah.
Of course.
We first time we got recognized felt like we made it. We got recognized by Green Lantern in SOBs at a Mark Ronson show. That felt like everything to us. When Just Blaze talked to us for the first time, when we went to Baseline, when you do all these things, you sell a TV show, you go to London, you're doing a music video with Bun B. They're all times when you're just like, man, I can't believe I'm in this situation and this is legitimate. But then it's like life keeps going and you find yourself in a new situation.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the time when you made it. And then it keeps going. It's like, well, I'm going to keep making it.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing, and this might be a terrible analogy, but I think it's the same thing as like a hood pass, where it's like, no, you like somebody, sure, will give you a quote unquote hood pass,
Right.
but like you still have to keep proving yourself every single time, every interaction, like. Every time that some kid comes up to me and tells me that I'm a legend,
Right.
there's 50 other kids in that room who do not know who I am.
Right.
And so, like, there's this thing where you can't act like the legend that one kid says you are because, what is that?
Yeah, here's who we really are, right? So many years ago, ASAP Mob was really like bubbling. And we got invited by some friends to go to this really low budget music video shoot at Curtin's place.
Yeah.
But it was told to us it's Curtin's place, and we're like, is that like a new like bar, in Brooklyn or something? But it actually turned out to be the apartment of Curtin's.
Shouts to Curtains, man.
And big shout to Curtains. And so we go down there and we're waiting downstairs and we get buzzed up and we walk up and the place is just packed out completely. It was for a song.
It was called Coke and White Bitches.
Oh yeah. Coke White Bitch. So
shout out to ASAP Ant.
So they're cooking the Coke, Coke on the stove.
And having an argument about the proper way to cook this imaginary Coke.
Yeah. And there's a million people in this place and they're like, Curtains comes out and he's like, yo, love to everybody who's here. But really, if there's anybody who can volunteer to leave, it would make everything just much better. And so we're like,
oh, the two white guys who just came in.
We're just like, got it.
Absolutely.
Yep. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah,
we'll leave.
Yeah, just like moving like this. for
And so we
everybody.
start to leave, and Rocky turns around and he goes, "No, not them." And we're just like, oh my God, because he was friendly with us, and we're just like, oh man, like sorry to
everybody.
the real.
We were apologizing to every single person.
Yeah, the real fans who are like leaving right here, who have to leave, and we're just that's who we maintain. That's
who we are.
Yeah.
That's like the essence of who we are.
No, it has to stay that way. I mean, you have to stay. There is so many weird dualities that you often exist in this world.
It's like, how can I be humble when I'm verified on Twitter?
That That blue check means something.
That's a
damn it.
T-shirt, Jeff. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is a T-shirt.
Yeah.
I still have 0 verifications. And
Damn.
It is.
No, but you're verified in these streets.
That's right.
I tried.
You got to check in your pocket. You know what I'm saying?
Ooh, that's a good one, too.
Yeah.
Bong, 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 bong. So in closing, what's next for you guys
What's next?
besides 250?
Lunch?
Yeah.
What's next? Working on a documentary. We are working on
New records?
new records.
Yep. Yeah.
We are working on a new podcast. So we're going to have 3 podcasts that are going to be out.
Yep. We're working on a new TV show.
Yep.
And we're there's all this promise of things that you never even anticipated over the course of your career. Honestly, if you told us that we would ever put out a book project, I never would have believed you. But we did that last year. And if you told us that we were, someone came up to us and they were like, you guys should really have a music festival where you guys curate it and it's like, cool. But someone who can really make it happen, it's like, well, why not?
Yeah.
We interviewed Birdman and Juvenile last week, and Birdman was like, I love podcasts. It's another way.
Well, you're calling it an iPod.
He did call it an iPod, but he said, I love iPods, and I it's another way to make money. And okay, yes, it is. For him, it's another revenue stream. But like Cash Money, for all their warts, that is an operation where it's just like they had a book, imprint. They had movies, they had records, they had all these different operations.
Yeah, it's an empire.
An oil, operation
Jay
maybe
Sean.
or whatever. Yeah, right. Jay Sean, all these different
They
things.
owned his life rights. Yeah.
Yeah, which is more than just.
By the way, you see that Lil Wayne just put out a new record with Kevin Rudolph?
I did not. What?
Kevin Rudolph.
Wow.
That needs to be 250.
I know.
Where
Yeah,
are
Kevin
you?
Rudolph. but for us, it's just like no. There's lots of different ways, and anything we put our name on, you should understand that is quality, right? And that's I think 12 years into your career where you want to be, and the sky is the limit really, and we're just excited for all these things. So that's
Also, I downloaded Duolingo, and I'm going to learn a new language.
oh great.
What is it going to be? You're going to learn Swedish or Norwegian? Like
Wow.
Pete Buttigieg?
Wow.
Yeah. First of all, shouts to Pete, Mayor Pete.
Shouts to Mayor Pete.
I want to get good at Spanish instead of getting mediocre at another language.
So you can go further and further uptown.
Yes,
Yes.
that's exactly right.
That's it. That's
That's how
it.
you got to do it. With that, thank you guys. Thank you again. And
Thank you.
free range.
Yeah.